I noticed on my travels recently that mushrooms are trending for Christmas. So I have a compilation of different mushroom DIYs that you can make for Whimsical Woodland Christmas DIY decor and incorporate it into your different Christmas projects. I'll have all original videos posted in the description box. Hey, it's Donna. I'm happy to have you here today. I found these really cute little mushrooms at the dollar store. I'm using some warm white and some golden antique yellow paint along with some golden metallic paint, and I also have some gesso, and we are going to transform these little mushrooms. So I am giving these each a coat of the gesso. Now, gesso is a primer that artists use on canvases and other substrates. I find it works really well on shiny surfaces, along with surfaces like this, because when I started to work with them, I discovered that the dye from these little mushrooms actually leached through, and I didn't want that to happen, so the gesso worked really well. Once they were all dry, I am now going in and giving them a coat of this antique gold craft paint. I allowed that to dry, and now I'm going in with the end of my paintbrush and I'm adding some little dots like you'd see on little toadstools, and I'm using the warm white. It's kind of like an antique white. See how cute those are? Next, I'm going in and I'm adding some gold paint just for a little shimmer, but what ended up happening was that it kind of covered up those little white dots. So I did have to go back in and add some more paint over top of those white dots like you see me right here. And then I allowed those all to dry, and then you can use these any which way. You can add them into some cute little scenes, onto ornaments, which I will be showing you how to do in a little bit. But for these particular ones, I actually incorporated it into an upcycled jewelry box. It was so fun and whimsical, but I thought you could even use these for Christmas time and add a little Christmas twist by adding some snow and some evergreens. Here are these little mushrooms again, and this time I'm using some chalk paint in New Life and Vintage. Now, I did mix these two colors together. Again, I give them a coat of some gesso first. You could try coating these with some chalk paint first, but just from my previous experience, I found that the gesso really helped to prevent that red dye from seeping through into your other paint colors. I have to say I'm excited that this trend is going because I've always loved little mushrooms for my holiday decor. All right, so the gesso has dried. Now I'm going to add that chalk paint, and I only had to apply one coat of my chalk paint. Sometimes with craft paint you do need to apply two coats, but since it's chalk paint, I found that I did not need to do that. So I am using these cute little guys on an ornament. So I am going to, again, add some of those little dots once that color has dried. And this time around, I'm using some, it's kind of like an off-white. They called it cream, but I found that it was more like an off-white color. So I applied all those little dots, and then I'm going to allow it all to dry. So you can add some varnish to seal these all up so the paint doesn't chip off. And now I'm going to also just apply a little bit of hot glue and attach it to my ornament. Again, I will have all the original content for you down in the description box if you want to see how this particular ornament was made. But you can see how cute and versatile these cute little mushrooms are. Aren't they adorable? For this project, you're going to need some wood beads or some wooden drawer pulls, something round. You're also going to need some napkin. I'm using the script napkin, some matte decoupage glue, as well as some plastic wrap. Now, I'm just cutting this plastic wrap down to size. I need to be able to protect my wood beads. Feel free to use something like a little plastic ball or some plastic beads. I had a really good assortment of some different sizes of wood beads, so that's why I chose to go this way and why I need to protect them, because I am going to be decoupaging on these beads and I don't want the water to damage them. So I set those aside for now. Now I'm going to work on this napkin. I actually got this napkin from a store called Daiso several years ago. I don't know if they still have them or not, but you could use any napkin. You could also use tissue paper that's got script on it, or you could even stamp onto tissue paper if you have a script stamp. Just make sure that the stamp ink is waterproof. So I'm just going to work on this napkin, tearing it down to size. I only want this small script, and I'm setting any pieces aside that are still usable. You can definitely use those for some other projects coming up. So I'm just going to continue to work on this. Again, just tearing it down into little pieces like you see me doing here. Next, I'm also going to tear up some backing from some other napkins that I had in my stash. Again, just tearing it up into small little workable pieces that I know that will work around those little wood beads. Again, I actually think I would have probably used tissue paper instead next time. This napkin was quite fragile to work with, and I had to build up several layers to create something really nice and strong. So I'm going to use a combination of some matte decoupage and some water. I'm doing 2 parts glue to 1 part water. I just find that my glue just goes further then, and it doesn't build up a super thick layer. I also find that even the matte decoupage glue tends to be a little bit on the shiny side, and if I add water, it's not quite as shiny. So I'm going to start to apply some of my glue. You can see it's not super drippy, which is exactly what I wanted. I'm going to press my tissue. I'm starting off with the plain white, and I'm putting it into place. And again, I'm adding a layer of the glue over top. So I'm just going to continue to build the glue and the napkin layers, and I'm only going about halfway down to 2/3 of the way down on the bead. I'm not completely covering this bead. I also want the edges of this to be nice and rough and kind of rugged, and you'll see why here in a minute once we are completed with this particular bead. So I'm just going to continue work on this layer with the plain white, and then we will start to work on the script layer. Again, I was inspired by Pinterest. Here's my inspiration pieces. I also just want to let you know that you will want to be very, very careful and delicate when you are using napkin, because it does tear easily once it gets wet. So I am using a soft bristled brush. I'm applying the script now, and I'm really liking how this is coming together. So I'm just going to apply those little pieces just randomly. I don't need the words to make sense on this piece, so just layer them over top of them, overlapping the pieces until you get a look that you are happy with. If you're not using a napkin that's scripted like this one is, then I would definitely recommend using a pattern that is very, very small. You don't want to use anything that's too big and overwhelming. So as you can see, my bead is halfway to 2/3 covered. I'm just trimming off the excess plastic so it can sit on my protective mat very easily, and I put it aside to dry partially. So it's starting to dry here, and I felt like it was still a little bit too thin, so I decided to add some more layers of the script tissue, and then I'm going to allow it to fully dry. So again, I'm allowing these to dry well on a protected surface, and I've got a vent that blows over top of these down in my basin, so they dry really well. I'm going to work on my stem. So what we're creating right now are some mushrooms. So the wood beads, we created those mushroom caps. And here I'm creating my stems by using some straws. Use any straw. This is just some straws that I had in my drawer that I thought would be perfect for this project. I am going to add some tissue that I had in my scrap pile, and I added a bit of the decoupage glue, and I'm wrapping these pieces around the straw. You're going to be just layering with glue and layering with this tissue. This tissue is a thicker one. It is a handmade tissue. And I actually really like how this is working, how it's coming together. I'm going to show you another way on how you can create the stems here in a minute. I actually prefer this way, and you'll see why. So I'm just going to continue to work on this, and then I'm going to set it aside and allow it to dry well. I do end up needing a longer straw than what you see here, and I need one of my straw ends to be poking out and not completely covered with the tissue paper, and I'll show you why here in a minute. Next, here I'm just going to show you how you can create the stem in another way. I threw some scraps in with my diluted decoupaged glue. The glue is about 1 part glue, 1 part water. Just tearing the strips down and just mixing that into glue. I'm kind of creating somewhat of a like paper mache kind of a consistency here. And now I'm just going to add those little clumpy pieces around my straw. Now, it ended up being quite the mess, I will admit. So I definitely prefer, even though it took me a lot longer to create wrapping the tissue around the straw, this just ended up being really lumpy and clumpy and took a very long time to dry. So, but you know, if you prefer this, then go for it. I would definitely suggest that you just do what works best for you. So I'm just going to continue to work on this clumpy mess and then I will show you the next step. So at this point, I wanted to kind of smooth it out a little bit more. So I took some of my dry strips and I wrapped it around, and there was enough glue in the clumpy bits that were already on there that I actually didn't need to add any extra glue. So our mushroom caps are partially dry. I let them dry for quite a while, but as I pulled these wood beads out, I was just being very careful. I ended up using a scissor to pop them out, because it just kept on turning around and around on me inside. There, I just got it out. Awesome. But as I was pulling the plastic away, I discovered that it was still wet inside. So I pulled that aside, set these aside and allowed them to finish drying on the inside. They were still a little bit pliable, but aren't they cute? I think they are so awesome. So I'm just going to continue to work on the rest of these little mushroom caps, and then I will show you the stems. Okay, my stems are all set and my mushroom caps are all set and dry, ready to be used. The mushroom caps are still quite thin, but that's okay. You can see here how I got a little bit of the straw uncovered. I need that because here we're using our fairy lights again, and I have a total, I think, of 12 lights on this strand. I'm going to take one of the lights, I'm going to fold the wire, and I'm going to push that light into the tube. And as you can see, I've stopped it by bending the wire at the bottom, and the light is in the clear portion of this upper straw. That is going to allow the light to glow beautifully like a lamp. I added some glue on the inner part of the mushroom cap, put the stem into place into that glue, and as you can see, these wires are removable if you feel the need to replace this at any time. So I'm just going to continue to work on the rest of the mushrooms. They came together really, really well. So I'm using this wood slab that I've got. It's about a 6-inch, maybe 8-inch piece. I don't want to wreck this wood slice with glue. So I'm going to cut out a piece of cardboard, and it's going to be just a little bit smaller than our wood slice. I just wanted it to fit just inside so that the the bark is still showing, but you don't actually end up seeing the cardboard. Now, of course, you don't have to do this step if you don't want, but like I said, I don't want to destroy my wood slice, so I could use it again for another project at a later date. So I'm gonna paint my wood slice just with some green paint. You don't have to be perfect with this. You don't even have to do this step. You could cover this up with paper instead, but I wanted to create a bit of a mossy look, so I'm using some olive green paint, and then I'm also going to be using some leaf green paint over top of this, just here and there. And I'm applying the leaf green paint with the same paintbrush, and I am applying it over this entire well, not the entire piece, just kind of creating like a blotchy look. Again, kind of making it look kind of moss-like. Once it's all painted to your desired look, you can allow it to dry well. So we're going to start to assemble everything, but I wanted to add just another little touch to this wood slice. I didn't like that you could see the raw edge of the cardboard, so I'm just going to use this green hemp twine that I had from in my stash. I got this from my local dollar store. I'm telling you, my local dollar store is awesome. It has so many fun, unique craft supplies. So I'm just going to use some hot glue and attach it to the edge of this little cardboard slice, and then we can put the rest of the pieces together. So remember, we have a battery pack that we need to hide for those lights that we're putting inside our mushroom. So I am going to create a bit of a pedestal, and I'm using these tumbling blocks that I got from Dollar Tree. If I stack one on top of the other, it's the exact height of our battery pack. So I am going to create 3 stacks of 2. You can see me doing that right here. I'm just going to use hot glue. You can use some wood glue as well, but I'm just trying to be quick with this project. So I got my 3 stacks of tumbling blocks, and now I am going to just line them up around the battery pack. And then I'm going to take my hot glue. I'm going to make sure that I've got everything lined up properly first, of course. And now I'm going to use my hot glue, and I'm just going to quickly add some to the tops, working very quickly here. And then I'm going to press my cardboard into place, and then you've got the exact location of where you need those little feet to be. And you can see that our battery pack is accessible. We can turn the lights off, we can change the batteries. This works great. There's even enough room to hide the excess wire as needed. All right, let's put all our other pieces together. Our mushrooms are ready to go. I've got some preserved reindeer moss, 2 types, as well as some birch bark. You're also going to need your fairy lights, a hot glue gun, any extra hot glue, don't forget, cutting tools, as well as some branches. You know me and branches. I love to use them in my projects along with some birch bark. So I needed to camouflage underneath our little cardboard slice. I don't want all of that to be showing. So I am going to be using this particular preserved reindeer moss. Now I've got 2 different types here, and this one is a drier consistency. So I'm going to layer the moss and some twigs underneath that cardboard slice. And that way here, it's going to cover up all that work that's underneath and create more of a realistic look. So I find that with projects like this, it's a lot about layering. So I will add a little piece, add another piece on top of that, and I might need to use another little branch here. So you could use some Spanish moss instead if you don't have any preserved reindeer moss. I know I have seen some Spanish moss that's in green color, or lots of other colors as well. I'm adding some moss to the edge of our cardboard as well, because I want to cover all of that up as well. And I am going to make sure that the battery pack gets covered up as well. Not completely, but just enough so You can't see it. It's just enough so you can actually access that battery pack, but it doesn't stand out like a sore thumb. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a little bit of moss. I had to put the battery pack into place so I knew exactly where I needed to put that moss. So I'm just going to show you how that's going to work right now. Battery pack's in place. I've got my cardboard into place as well. You can see how awesome that turned out. Worked great. So now I'm going to start to layer some pieces on top of the cardboard. Now you got to remember, the cardboard is not glued to my wood slice. It is loose. So I'm going to glue some branches. I love to use branches to create lots of depth and dimension. So I'm going to layer a few branches first. I like to start with my larger ones. I'm just going to again use my hot glue to glue these all into place. I love to go foraging for branches. I actually just get these ones from a trail really close to me. And they prune those shrubs anyways because they have to keep the path of the trail clear. So I like to go and snip a few for crafting. So I'm just going to put my battery pack into place and I'm turning my lights on because I'm going to start to weave my lights into place. And I'm also going to start to add my mushrooms. So remember, we've got each wire bent in place where I want to have a mushroom. So I think it was about every second or third light I bent, and that's where I'm going to be putting a mushroom. So I'm just going to figure out a placement for each individual mushroom, and then you want to add a dollop of hot glue, put the stem into place, and you want to make sure you hold until the glue sets before you release it because the mushrooms will topple over. So I'm going to continue to add each mushroom, just kind of scattering them over top of the cardboard. And every once in a while, you'll have to just bend the wire that is left behind to hide it, as well as making sure that those other little lights are showing as well. So I need to cover up those wires. So I'm going to start to add some moss, some birch bark, as well as our other little mushrooms and any additional branches that we need to add. I'm using the moss again to cover up that wire and also to kind of cover up the cardboard. I don't completely cover the cardboard because you don't end up really seeing it because of the green. I'm also adding a little bit of birch bark. Again, I foraged this. This is actually just some torn pieces from a larger piece of birch bark. I'm just going to continue to layer all of my elements until I get a really beautiful, kind of like a forest floor look, and it almost looks like luminescent mushrooms and little fireflies prancing around. I'm adding a little mushroom. Again, add some glue, hold the mushroom in place till the glue sets. Don't forget you need to work on your backside, and you can move the wires around as needed, just gently. Just be careful that you don't accidentally tug so hard that you pull the mushrooms off. So I'm just going to continue to work on this piece until I get the look I like. It's coming together so well, and it's better than what I imagined compared to my inspiration piece. This is something that I made with my own two hands, and I'm just so excited that I was able to share this with you. So this has got to be one of my most favorite pieces that I've made, but I'm like, you know what? I want this to stay out all year long. So I decided to add some wintry touches. I've got this beautiful garland of pine cones that have got some sparkly glitter on it, and I have some evergreens that I had picked up from Michael's a couple of years ago. You can see I'm just snipping off some of the pine cones, and then I'm also going to cut down these evergreens. This is just faux evergreen, and these faux evergreen branches also have just a touch of glitter. I like just sometimes a hint of glitter. It just helps to bring a magic to a light up piece like this. So now I'm just going to go ahead and use some hot glue and tuck these little pieces of branches here and there to give it a bit more of a wintry look. I really love how these branches are looking in here. They kind of look like they got touched with frost. Love that. You could also add some some berries. That would really be pretty as well, and some figurines if you'd like. You can see here too, like again, those little mushrooms, they are so versatile. Now I'm going to go ahead and add those sparkly pine cones in and around. I love these. You can use some forged pine cones as well. That would be a really pretty touch as well. So now for another fun little touch, I am going to add some faux snow. This faux snow came from a previous project. That's why there's a little bit of debris in it. But to me, it didn't matter because there was some little moss bits and whatnot in there. So it just added to the look. And I think it just really finishes it off and makes it so, so pretty for the winter and Christmas season. I love the woodland look, and I found a really, really cool technique that I will have a link to down in my description box. Somebody made these mushrooms and they used styrofoam balls as the top. So I am going to cut this 2-inch ball in half. Use any size that you have in your stash. I'm using this metal lid from a candle and it is 4 inches in diameter. Now you just need to adjust the size to fit around whatever styrofoam ball you're using. So I traced around this with a black pen, and then I'm going to use my scissors to cut it out. This ornament was actually inspired by something that I had seen on Pinterest. All right, so next you're going to need some needle and some thread. As you can see, I doubled up on my thread, and then I have a nice large knot so it doesn't pull through. And then you're going to do a simple running stitch around the edge of your circle. We want to create a little pouch. I do have another tutorial on how I have made some mushroom ornaments. I will have that video linked down for you down below. It's an old one, but it is so cute. It's definitely a must-see. So continue to stitch around the edge until you get to the other end. I did start and finish on the inside. So here's our little pouch. I snipped the strings off so they remained nice and long so I can still tie them off. You want to slip your foam round inside the little pouch and just adjust the fabric around it, and then you'll want to pull your strings tight and then tie a knot tight. I think this is coming together really well. Now this fabric has frayed a little bit, so I'm going to show you how we can just make sure that that doesn't happen. The golden yellow one is actually a smaller one, and I love how that one looks as well. You can do these in so many fun and whimsical colors. So here I've got a nice sturdy cotton fabric, and I'm just cutting out a little circle. You could use some felt fabric as well. And then you're going to take your hot glue gun and you're going to generously apply some hot glue to the center and just around the edge, just to help prevent that fabric from fraying. So I wanted to make sure that the fabric stuck to the center, so I just pushed it in just a little bit. And then you can go to your dollar store or out in the forest and get some branches. I got these from my local dollar store. I like the little nubs that they have, and it's nicely cut off. It's nice and flat. I also thought these would make great mushroom stems. Aren't these fun? And it's in perfect style to what I do here on my channel, that nature-inspired woodland look. I love it. So I just added some hot glue and then chose the stump that I wanted and applied it to the bottom of our mushrooms. Now you got to remember, mushrooms come in all different shapes and sizes and colors. All right, so these are straight pins. You can find these in the jewelry section, and I also have just some thread needles. And I'm using that to poke a hole in the top as we're creating an ornament hanger. So this eye hook is about 1 inch long. It fits really well into the larger mushroom. And I just added some hot glue and pushed that into place. And then for the smaller one, I'm using an eye hook that's about 3/4 of an inch. And same thing, I just added hot glue and then push it down into the foam. And then there you have a nice little ornament hook. Next, I am just going to be using some thread. This is embroidery thread, and I'm going to just tie it off to create a hanger. Oh, I'm loving these so much. I'm definitely making more. I'm going to dive into my velvet stash to create some velvet mushrooms as well. So I was able to make some of those velvet mushrooms that I had just mentioned. They are made exactly the same way, and I'm incorporating them into this beautiful winter wonderland little nature table scene. It was such a fun piece, or such a fun tablescape to put together. I love Woodland Whimsical looks like this, and creating these little mushrooms worked out perfectly for this particular project. So you can see I just tuck them in here and there, and then once you add those pretty little fairy lights, it just brings the whole piece together and creates that really magical look. So now again, I like to add just a sprinkling of the faux snow. So I'm just going to add that. And I have to say, this turned out absolutely beautiful. I kept it up for the winter season, and we loved it for our Christmas decor. I think these mushrooms just tucked in here and there really added to the whole look. These mushrooms can definitely be turned into little ornaments as well, or you can add these into wreaths. I thought that would be really pretty. Into like a wintry scene under a cloche would be a fun and whimsical look as well. Mushrooms like this and all the mushrooms I'm showing you today can definitely be transformed into something amazing for your winter and Christmas decor. So I had these ceramic mushrooms last year that I had done up for a previous project. I'll have the link to that video down in my description box if you want to check that out. And honestly, I kind of got tired of them, so I decided to revamp these mushrooms this year as I was inspired by something that I had seen on Instagram. So this is how I had done up these mushrooms, and I used gesso. This is the Artist Loft brand from Michaels. It's a nice, thick and creamy consistency, and I gave 2 coats to each of these mushrooms, allowed it to dry well in between each coat. So the mushrooms are now dry, and I am going to be doing decoupage on these. I'm using the Decor brand of decoupage glue, and it's in the matte finish. And I'm also going to be using these tissue papers that I picked up from Dollar Tree over the past few years. They've got gorgeous patterns, so you'll just have to go and see what your store has. So what I like to do is tear these pieces down into some smaller usable pieces, and as you can see, I'm making sure that I have some of those leaf shapes intact. So I'm going to just continue to rip my pieces down until I got a good stash. So I'm sure many of you have done decoupage before, but for those of you who haven't, you'll want to apply a layer of your glue first, and then you're going to want to press your papers into the glue. As you can see, I'm getting some on the underside as well, as I'm going to have some of the tissue paper overhang on the bottom edge. Then I'm going to just push the paper into place, and I'm molding the tissue paper around the mushroom edge just to keep that shape. Continue to add some glue where needed. You need to make sure you've got good contact between your paper and your glue. So once you have all the paper connected to the surface of your mushroom, then you can go back in and apply some more glue over top. Then I like to just take my finger and smooth it out as best I can. I'm okay with the wrinkles. I know there's some techniques out there where you can apply this without the wrinkles, but I honestly am okay with those. So I'm just going to continue to add my tissue paper and my glue onto the surface until I have my mushroom top all covered. Once it's covered, then you can set it aside and allow it to dry. So I was thinking you could definitely decoupage these for Christmas by using some Christmassy tissue paper or napkins, but I'm going to show you how you can transform these back if you ever get bored of a project and turn them into some new decor for your home. So again, I'm going to be using a mix of the New Life and Vintage Whisper chalk paints by Decor, and I'm going to give this mushroom a coat of the chalk paint. It did take 2 coats to cover up the tissue paper, but you can see the really cool texture that was left behind. I had allowed it to dry, and at this point I'm like, okay, I don't like the way the base looks now, so I'm using some vintage white wash, again from Decor, and it's great to use for a piece like this. It goes on translucent, and then you can take your rag and dab any of the excess off, and you can see all the different texture that was created by using this wash and how it lightened up that ceramic that's underneath. I really liked how that turned out. I allowed that to dry, and now I'm going to go ahead and paint some of those dots back in. I know it's kind of the same technique as when I first started out with this, but like I said, I just wanted to show you how, if you're ever tired of a project, how you can just transform it to something new. So now I have decided that I'm going to give this a wash with some pearl white effect metallic paint, again by Decor. I mixed 1 part paint to 1 part water, and I'm going to give it a coat of this, and then I'm going to take my rag again and just dab it off, and it just gives such a pretty and whimsical and magical sheen. Again, perfect for the Christmas season. I really like how this turned out, and I can't wait to incorporate it in some fun little wintry scenes. So I had all of this scrap sweater left over from some projects from the past few years, and you can see that there's just like little bits here and there. I decided that I thought these would make really cute little mushrooms, so I'm starting off with kind of creating just a basic mushroom cap shape. I didn't follow a pattern, I just kind of just winged it and just slowly cut away at this until I got a shape that I was happy with. And I needed a piece for the front as well as the back. So I've got 2 different pieces here. You can see that the one has got the spots on the front. I thought that would create a really fun look for the front of my mushroom. And just the basic simple pattern for the back side. So I just placed the front one onto the scrap of the other one to get the shape that I needed. I'm not going for a perfect shape here. I'm just going to use some hot glue as well to adhere them together. Of course, you could stitch these together instead if you'd like. So I'm just going to work in sections and slowly just stick the edges together. As you can see, I only add some hot glue to the edge of each mushroom. Now you could do these in reverse and then flip them out inside out so you don't see a seam, but I kind of like just the simple rustic look of this, so I decided just to keep all my seams exposed. I'm just going to continue to close these up, and then on the bottom you can see I'm only going to add some glue, just enough so I can still access the inside of my little mushroom cap. So you can see here I have a little hole still at the bottom of my mushroom, and I'm going to use some fiber fill to stuff the mushroom cap, and that'll give it some nice dimension. Now I just get my my fiber fill from pillows that I pick up for really cheap at Walmart. I know a viewer recently mentioned that you can get those large bags of fiber fill for really cheap at Walmart as well. That's definitely an option, but I know not everybody has storage space for one of those large bags, so a pillow is a nice affordable option, or you can even just get some mini bags of some fiber fill. So once you have the mushroom cap all stuffed, you can then glue that hole shut. Next, I'm going to be creating a stem. So I'm just taking the edge of this sweater and I'm going to roll it up into like just a stem-like shape. Of course, you don't have to do this. You could use a little wood stem if you prefer. I thought it would be fun to use the edge of this sweater. Again, I'm using hot glue just to seal it all up and glue it together. I do just check once in a while to make sure that I've got the right size. And then I am going to just trim it down as needed and use some hot glue to continue to glue it to the base of my little stuffed mushroom cap. So this was a really fun little idea to use up some of those scraps. So I'm going to show you how easy it is to add a little string to this, but along the way you could either glue a string within your little mushroom or you could use some ribbon. But since I already had my mushroom put together, I thought I'll show you how easy it is just to quickly add a little string. So I just added a little glue on the end of my string to stiffen it. That was a tip from a viewer. It makes it easier to thread a needle. Now this is just embroidery floss. Now I'm going to just figure out where I can add my string so it hangs evenly. It wasn't even there, so I just moved it over a little bit. Now it's hanging evenly, sorry. I'm gonna just tie a simple little knot at the base, and then I will be tying the two strings off together. I'll be doing that at the top, and then that will create a nice little hanger to hang on our Christmas tree. To make it a little more whimsical, you could add some beads before you glued this all together. You could stitch on some beads, some sequins, some buttons to make it a fun little ornament. I found these cute little wooden mushrooms in the Crafter Square fall decor and craft section. Of course, you can get these on Amazon as well, so I definitely would check that out. I'm going to give these a coat of some walnut gel stain as well as some cream paint. So I'm applying the gel stain to the top of the mushrooms, and you'll need a rag to wipe off any of the excess. Of course, feel free to paint these any color you would like. Now you could use this or leave the stem just as is if you'd like, but I wanted to paint mine out a cream color. So I'm just going to paint the underside as well as the stem, and then I'm going to allow it to dry well. Okay, so these are all nice and dry and looking pretty cute. So now I'm using my cream paint and the end of a paintbrush, and I'm going to add some dots just like an actual toadstool would have. Again, you're going to let that dry and you're going to do the same for both mushrooms. Aren't they looking so cute? Okay, this is optional. I'm using some archival ink in the potting soil color and using a stiff bristled brush, and I'm going to apply it to the bottom of our mushroom stems to make it look like it's dirt, like you actually went out to the forest and picked these. I thought that was a really pretty added touch. And then I'm going to dive into those eye hooks again, and same procedure as before. I'm using a nail to puncture through the top, just top layer, and that will give me a guide to screw these eye hooks into the top to provide myself an ornament hanger. Of Of course, use any tool in your stash to help guide that eye hook into your mushrooms. So these were the smallest eye hooks I could find. If I could find a smaller one, I would have used that for these mushrooms, but I thought I'd try to kind of camouflage this eye hook a little bit. So I decided to try adding just a little twine bow on this one. I thought it was okay. I don't think I would do that for all of them, but here's what that looks like in case you want to try that out. So then you just want to, again, add some jute twine. I just tied the two ends together to give myself a full loop to hang on the tree. I don't know about you, but I really have a thing for mushrooms this year. I think they are so fun and whimsical. So this next ornament is really fun and whimsical. You are going to need some air dry clay. I picked up these packages from the kids section at my local dollar store. I needed a red and a white. I am also going to use one of these little wooden dowel pieces. They're just miniature. They're about an inch and a half. And you could use a branch instead if that's all you have. So I am going to be making a air dry clay mushroom. So I wanted to create the stem first. So I took some of the white and I built it up around the wood dowel piece. That will give it a little bit more weight. I'm just smoothing out the edges, as you can see here. Then I'm setting those aside for now. I am going to be taking some red and I'm going to create the mushroom caps. So I kind of made a roundish shape and I'm just molding it into a mushroom cap kind of shape, as you can see here. And then I'm just taking my fingers and I'm smoothing it out. Once you have your pieces all formed, you can set them aside and allow them to dry for about 24 hours. So here are our pieces all dry. Got the stem and the mushroom cap, but they didn't quite have the right colors to them. So I'm using my craft paint and I am painting the underside of the mushroom cap with white craft paint, as you can see here. It'll take about 2 to 3 coats. I'm creating a toadstool kind of look, so it needed to be painted on the other side. And just for some consistency, I added the craft paint to the white stem as well. So I allowed the white to dry, and once dry, you can then paint the top of the toadstool. Again, you'll need about 2 to 3 coats. I am using what's called Tuscan red. It's a really, really beautiful kind of Christmassy red color. So here I am painting the top portion and I'm cleaning up the edges a bit where the white was meeting and allow it to dry in between coats. You can see here it's all nice and dry and I wanted to start to attach the pieces. So I'm using some hot glue. I'm generously applying it to the underside of the mushroom cap and then placing the top of our stem, holding in place till set. Now to add the dots to the top of our mushroom cap to give it that toadstool look. I'm using the bottom of a pencil eraser and I'm dipping it into white paint and I'm adding the dots all over. If you want some varied sizes, then you can just take a paintbrush and just freehand the dots, as you can see here, and then allow this to dry. So this ultra fine glitter paint is one of my favorites. Decor carries it. I have got it linked in my Amazon favorites. If you're at all interested, I'll have that link down below. And I am going to give my mushroom a coat of this glimmer paint, and that will give it a really beautiful, kind of whimsical, fairy-like look. And the light will bounce off of it and just look so beautiful. I seriously love this glitter paint. So you can add as many layers of the glitter paint as you'd like and allow it to dry. Once dry, then you're going to need to add an eye pin. I picked these up from my local dollar store. You can get them at the craft stores as well. Using a poking tool, I poked a hole into the top of our mushroom cap, and I did need to trim this eye pin down a bit. I'm not sure if they come in a smaller size or not, but I trimmed it down, and then using some hot glue, I glued it into place once I have the desired length. So I wanted to add some more shine to our mushroom as well as protect the surface of our mushroom. So I am coating the entire piece with some gloss decoupaged glue. You can use any brand you like. I just use this brand that I picked up from Michael's. So give it a coat and then allow it to dry. I'm going to be threading a needle with some baker's twine. You don't have to do this, but I just found it easier for me to put the string through my eye hook, as you can see here. And then I am going to create a loop, tie a knot, and there you have a hanger. This seriously is such a cute ornament for a Woodland whimsical Christmas tree. So I had a few people request that I do pinecone crafts, so I'm showing another one. Here I'm again using a ponderosa pinecone, but this is a smaller one. I am using my wire snips because it's got a nice pointy end, and I'm cutting into the middle because I wanted to remove the pointy end of this pinecone. It does take a little bit of muscle work and a little bit of wiggling. If you have another suggestion on how to do this, please leave that in the comments section, because I admit I struggled a little bit with this, but I did manage to cut through it and it popped off. Now I'm just going to clean up some of the debris, and then here you're left with the base of the pine cone. I got these little stumps from my local dollar store, and I am going to just pick one out that I feel looks best as a stem underneath this mushroom cap. That's right, we are creating a cute little mushroom ornament, and I thought that this would look so good together, a great nature-inspired craft. I'm using twine again because it's a nice natural looking string, but if you don't like twine, then please use anything that you like. I'm adding a dollop of hot glue to the top of the pine cone, and I'm going to push the knot down into that glue, and that will help to just secure that knot, and you've got a great hanger. Next, I'm adding glue to the underside of our pinecone mushroom cap, and I'm adding our little branch, and I'm going to hold it till the glue sets. I decided I'm going to add just a little touch of moss underneath. I wanted a bit of that nice pretty green contrast, and that also helps hide any of the mess that I may have made from cutting the pine cone, as well as any of the hot glue that may have squeezed out from the stem. I am also going to add just a little bit of the moss to the bottom of the stem. You know how when you are out in nature, when you're looking at mushrooms, they're kind of dirty on the bottom, and they are often growing up out of grass or moss. And I thought it would be kind of a more natural look if I added just a little bit. So you can see I'm just taking my glue gun, the nozzle, and I'm kind of going up and down just a little bit just to create a bit of variation around the base of the stem, just to create a bit more interest. But that's it. It was so easy and fun to make. I would love to know your favorite project for today was, and if you plan on incorporating some mushrooms into your Christmas decor. I want to thank you all so much for joining me today, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.